All right, we're going to jump right into our second session for today. And for this one, I'd like to bring on Henri from Privy on stage. So please give Henri a big round of applause. Hey, Henri.
Hi.
So anything big happen this year for you guys?
A number of things. I think it's been a very exciting year. Last few months, a lot of my attention was on the work that we've undertaken with Stripe. So we got acquired recently, and we are now, crypto team working at Stripe and doing the things that we do, but with just a lot more muscle behind us.
I mean, awesome and congrats. You obviously kind of just said that nothing really changes for your day-to-day, but what are kind of the things that you would now get to add in from the Stripe network?
Yeah, I mean, I guess jumping into the things that don't change first, one of the things that got us excited in the beginning when Stripe reached out was the question of what would it take for us to think this is a really good place for us to do work. And the sort of core three tenets were, one, we want to remain fairly autonomous. We want to be moving at the pace that we're moving at. We will stay in our office, like very lowbrow things like that, but that end up making a huge difference. Two, we have to be able to work with everyone across the space as we have. I think obviously everything that's happening around stablecoins is extraordinarily exciting. There's on the back tail of that, like a lot around tokenization of other assets. But I think beyond that, I come from Protocol Labs. I think a lot of Web3 is very important to me. I think there are a lot of other aspects to the space that matter deeply, and it would be such a miss to lose that focus that we've had. And so I think we work with a lot of fintechs, we work with a lot of trading platforms, we work with a lot of consumer products, and that doesn't change. And then I think the third was we need to be able to work with Stripe competitors, bridge competitors. Like ultimately, the space is so nascent. There is so much exploration and experimentation to be done across the board, and we want to be able to work with any party that's doing something interesting, and frankly, that our customers want to work with, which is the main part of how we drive any partnerships that we do. The things that do change, I think, really are maybe twofold. First, from a purely logistical, muscle standpoint, we just have a lot more resources to play with, and that comes in sort of two flavors. One, Stripe is a lot of how we've modeled building our own APIs and our own developer tooling. They know a lot.
It is a gold standard still.
And so we want a lot of resourcing, and they have offered to help us on a number of ways in terms of everything from API semantics to scaling infrastructure to continuous hardening of security surfaces, which is vast majority of our work. And so across the board, that just means we have our team, but we have a really leaned in, basically massive engineering and product team at our heels, sort of pushing us forward, which is really great. The second is, I think wallets, a lot of our work is in sort of, so Privy, for those who don't know, builds embedded wallets. We build basically digital asset accounts that you can embed into your product directly. So if your user already knows about crypto, has an existing wallet, they can bring it with them, and we help support basically connectors into those third-party wallets. But if the user has never heard of crypto, doesn't care about crypto, and simply will get access to assets as part of the product experience, we help set them up basically, or set the developer up with key management that enables them to spin up self-custodial wallets in their product. And a big part of that is basically then connections with the rest of the money movement space. And so that's the second big thing, is ultimately how do these digital accounts work as part of bundles, specifically with things like money movement, payment methods, stablecoin orchestration, KYC, a lot of these areas that we've just seen are part of what our customers need to get off the ground really quickly and build global businesses on crypto rails. So that's the second really interesting
massive
part.
Unlock. You get direct access to that rail and
Exactly.
enable that on day one. That's amazing. Has that changed how you think about product now, or was that already part of the plan and you just now basically get there faster?
I think it has. I think in two ways. First, we're a startup, and so in a lot of ways, a lot of our thinking on product was always based on focus. We don't get to do multiple things. We get to do one thing, maybe two if we're lucky, and we have to do them really well. And I think most of our work is driven by customers, and most of our work happens, we have yearly goals, and that's typically a sentence. I would like this to be true at the end of the year, which translates into quarterly goals to actually get there, which translates into sprints. And then a lot of it is basically based on our partnerships, our customers, and what they need us to do. I think the first difference is we do now have some, call it multi-year plans, where beyond Privy, Stripe is an extraordinarily driven, hungry, but also humble home that is very excited about this future that hopefully is being built, and that wants to be a big part of it. And I think understanding where we can kind of put spin on the ball on things happening at Stripe to help influence product decisions there in ways that we think will benefit Privy customers down the line is the first piece. So actually interacting with basically teams that are working on longer tail projects outside of our area, but where we think there will be like really incredible synergies down the line of this is something that we can actually really use for Privy customers. And this is the shape that, a given neobank would want for this product so that we can work with it really well when integration time comes or something like that. So that's the first one. And then I think the second one is really much more looking at the sort of, entire arsenal of tooling at our disposal. We have a much deeper bench of product capabilities that we can call upon to build the right solutions for our customers. And so that's had us kind of broaden our thinking in terms of, how can we help these folks? How much deeper do we want to get into fiat to crypto conversions? What can we do to help with, licensing or KYC? These questions that, again, were before a little bit out of reach for us.
That's amazing. I mean, I've kind of seen Privy from kind of the beginning to kind of where everybody is now. And the interesting part has been the users that have been the customers for different websites that are using Privy for the logins. And now you kind of have a whole variety of categories and sectors of people using it. And the question I have for you is, I guess in 2025, are there any kind of obvious patterns that you notice on like people who are building kind of crypto native products and how they think about this versus traditional non-crypto companies who are also integrating Privy? How do they kind of treat the product? How do they treat the solutions in general? Or what's kind of obvious when you kind of talk to both of these segments?
Yeah, I think broadly there's a number more, but there are two core archetypes that stand out. And the first is the crypto native team. These are typically smaller teams. They have slightly more like homogeneous stacks. So, we started, for example, with a React library that had a number of presets that worked for crypto teams, but that, for example, gave them a lot of control over some of the guts of like blockchain interactions, being able to configure slippage, gas prices, et cetera, et cetera. Today, we work with, call it, Fortune 500, like fintechs. These are 1,000-person engineering teams, usually not React-based. They want direct access to our API. They want a lot more flexibility across a number of fronts related to authentication, UX, and other pieces. Conversely, they want a much deeper abstraction when it comes to the crypto guts. They want a lot more of the decisions having been made for them with regards to what are the right ways of bridging that gap between off-chain and on-chain in a way that enables their users to use chains directly. And they're very sensitive to different things. So I think a lot of our work, as we've seen this develop over the last 2 years, has been taking the sort of crypto system that we've built and unbundling it so that we could offer sort of deeper hooks into the guts of the package to enable different customer types. But ultimately, we've found that serving both sets of customers is extraordinarily self-reinforcing in a sense, because the crypto natives, so to speak, kind of show us how to use the tech, whereas fintechs today, at least, help distribute it on a much larger scale.
So are you saying that effectively you're still building the same product and you're just exposing different stacks of it, or you actually now have to kind of cater for two different audiences and two different sort of sub-product decisions for everything that you ship?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting. I think we fucked this up and corrected it. But basically, we started assuming the latter, which is we're going to have to build basically two different products. It'll be the same underlying tech platform, and we launched this in December of last year, which was like a different wallet type that we thought would be more appropriate for.
Is that the embedded wallet?
This was like server wallets, and we made
okay.
this, and we basically realized that the distinction, like. Our assumption was like the Venn diagram overlap of the customer segments is like basically two mostly separate circles. And it's actually just not true. Across so many different like facets of the product, it is a complete overlap of the circles. And what we've moved towards it is actually the same product, but you can pick where in the abstraction ladder you want to dive into. And I think one of our core strengths, I see it when we talk to customers who have been sort of fudded about Privy in the past. And part of the FUD is, well, Privy serves a consumer product. Why could it be right for you as a multi-billion-dollar asset holder? And I think the reality is that actually you kind of temper infrastructure by working with solutions across the board. So we work with consumer products who have insanely spiky traffic coming from hotspots across the world. And so that's allowed us, for example, to build server co-location in Singapore, in SF, in Frankfurt. And that means that we have really good latency across these places because a game had to be able to be responsive for a spike because some I don't know, Korean blog wrote about it once. And then conversely, we work with neobanks that are holding these assets, which means that we have to have modes of operations for the product where the product runs policy engines, the product has MFA on any transaction, you have a key quorum of M of N users needed to sign to actually do a transaction. And so all of these pieces sort of strengthen each other, but the key and hard thing is to make sure that a developer can quickly get to the product configuration that they need for their users.
I guess one thing I'm kind of and this is actually something as a full-on separate follow-up we never discussed in before. You effectively are in a position where you can, given the distribution and just the defaults that you can present to different customers who have massive distributions, you kind of get to influence the future of wallets altogether. Do you actively kind of think about that? Or I guess, how do you kind of foresee the wallet ecosystem? Do you feel like you're a participant, or do you feel like you get to actually dictate some of the decisions that somebody should or should not make? We're seeing embedded wallets, we're seeing smart wallets being kind of reintroduced, all the integrations. Like, how does the wallet world change according to you over the next kind of couple of years? It's a very big loaded question, but curious to get any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are a participant, and as a participant, we are a driver, modulo the success of the customers that we get to serve. And so I think a lot of our focus is how do we make our customers as successful as possible. And I think a lot of our sort of product MO has been we exist to enable developers to build better products, secure products, self-custodial products for their users. But beyond there, our agenda is not to push a given technology or a given way of doing things. Our agenda is to help them build, experiences that can delight their users and enable them to do new things with value and ownership on the web. So we've kind of taken a sense of, we have things that we'd like to see, and this is where the defaults we introduce hopefully, again, put a little bit of spin on how you should use these things by default. For example, this is a spicy take, so I'll give a spicy take, but we thought a lot about how should we present Wallet Connect to our customers. And I think Wallet Connect is an extraordinarily important part of the stack. They are the linchpin to so much of how connectors work today, and they've done an incredible job setting out standards that basically enable a very fragmented wallet space to be usable for developers. And yet our thinking was, if somebody's never heard of crypto and they're using a wallet that they don't know about, and the experience that we're telling them to go through is click Connect, which is already a little weird, then click Wallet Connect, which is a protocol you've never heard of, and then go down and find the name of that wallet that you maybe were looking for. There's no world in which they're going to get there. And so the decision was...
We switch devices and part of that process.
Yeah. And so the decision we made, it's stupid, but we kind of sweat it, is let's have it be more wallets. Like Privy itself, by the way, this is not us like... So we kind of hid the underlying protocol in the same way, by the way, that Privy as a brand, we don't have a consumer wallet. We simply serve our customers so that they can build onto crypto stack. And so these are, I think, kind of first principles that we have about the way crypto usage will evolve in the world, that I guess we are pushing through the ways in which we built our abstractions. But ultimately, if a customer says, I really want to show this, then we're like, okay, it's your product, and we're here to let you do it. So to actually answer your question, I see embedded wallets as a growing part of the ecosystem. I think, the analogy I like to use is I think of wallets as digital identity passports. One of the things they allow you to do is hold assets. I'm a huge wallet user across, a number of wallets traditionally. But also sometimes it's just too heavy to bring your own wallet and experience. If I want to trade, having to like confirm a transaction every time. If I'm on mobile, it's a pain in the ass. Like there's a number of places in which it doesn't work. So I guess the two core takes I have is the idea that a user would have a single wallet seems to me very misguided, if only for privacy purposes. That seems to not be the way anyone operates in the world.
Plus the multi-chain world you got to factor in.
Yeah. And then the idea that every user will want their own, call it personal wallet, which is to say these are the traditional, MetaMask, Phantom, Rainbow that you think of, also seems to me like not the way the world is headed. I think basically people will get into crypto through experiences, through the apps that serve them or give them access to these rails. And then at some point they may become mature enough that they decide to say, hey, I actually want to hold this in a container that is fully built around the crypto experience rather than as part of another experience that I'm going through. And so we see ourselves as very complementary to traditional wallets. I think both will continue to grow massively. But the analogy I use is people don't get a passport to feel American, to feel French, to feel whatever it is they feel. They get a passport to take a plane. And I think our goal is what is the fastest, safest path to getting you on the flight. And then I think from there, if you're traveling a lot, maybe you should get a passport and maybe you should do these things. But that's kind of how we're seeing things evolve. And then a lot more internet connectivity between the wallet and the rest of the infrastructure being built across DeFi, across various fiat money movement rails, and so on and so forth.
So you got the global entry game here.
Exactly.
So two questions, and we obviously I don't have a lot of time, so I'll see if I can make these quick. It feels like the world is headed towards managed wallets for the mass audience. How do you think about that premise and also just the security of this, where there may be more than one person who effectively has the ability to trigger events and kind of manage your funds instead of you owning the keys?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we use managed wallets in a certain word, and I think there are broadly three dirty words in crypto: decentralization, trustlessness, and custody. Self-custody, whatever kind of custody. Like you, based on the marketing you're trying to posit, you'll spin it to your needs, which is true of all of these words, and all of these are very nuanced, and I think words that require a lot of precision. We define managed wallets as custodial wallets, so that's our definition. I think the way you use managed wallets,
I was referring to as custodial as well.
Okay, I think. So I'll give an example. Something we saw. We built out a policy engine because of agentic trading platforms. I want to give an LLM access to my wallet so they can trade on my behalf. And I'm worried that a hallucination in the LLM will completely wreck my portfolio. And so I want a set of policies that limit what the LLM can do. So we build this for this use case. And then, it turns out it's extraordinarily useful for neobanks and global remittance products who want to, for example, limit a wallet to only trading USDC or something like that. And so this is part of the, we see this virtuous cycle of the customers that we serve. The LLM needs to be given access to your wallet. So this is, your self-custodial wallet, but you have now created what we call a scoped signer, but you can call it whatever you want. It's a permission entry point into the wallet with certain permissions that you've explicitly given the LLM of, I will enable this LLM to trade up to X. With these contracts, for example, I only want it to be the Uniswap V4 contract, and only this much per day or something like that. Ultimately, you remain the sole party in control of the wallet, in that you can always revoke that permission and you can always basically, export your keys and leave the system. So I think the way I think about it, which is maddeningly nuanced, and it's a very complicated topic, but the way I think about it is in terms of intermediation. Ultimately, I remember the old Bitcoin paper wallets.
You're still delegating in this flow.
And with MetaMask, this is not to make it a nihilistic argument that everything is the same. I think these are extraordinarily morally valent questions. But with MetaMask, you are being intermediated by the client and the software that is shown. There is a swap button on there, and MetaMask has chosen which swap rails you're going to be using. In fact, monetizing these swap rails. There is a send button, and they've decided to, make it ETH first rather than ETH and Solana, even though they're Solana now. But we are all the victims or beneficiaries of 100 product decisions that have been made by the infrastructure providers that are there. And the way I see our work is to basically give a little bit more control to the app developer or the product developer who wants to utilize these rails so that they can make decisions. Because, for example, maybe pick Robinhood, a Robinhood user doesn't actually want to see the gas that they're going to be spending on each and every little thing.
Or Robin may want to sponsor it for their users. Yeah.
And so we're kind of removing agency from the user in enabling that sponsorship, because maybe the user wanted to pick a different setting for gas or wanted to use a different node provider, but a lot of users don't. And so I see the wallet. I think there are going to be really hard lines that have to be drawn around this sort of spectrum where there are places, and this is a lot of what we work on, is making sure that we don't introduce food guns into the experience where the developer is given so much power that they can put the user at risk, and where the user has to give sort of proactive consent to the things that they're enabling the wallet to do. And so I think this is where we need to sort of continue to draw bright lines so that we have definitions of this is a self-custodial experience, this is a custodial experience, and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of the next few years are going to be about that. But I think beyond this, what we're doing is we're kind of opening up the design space so that you can really tailor the experience to the audience that you're serving.
I mean, the one thing I'm hearing, which I'm really happy to hear, is that you are fundamentally saying that you believe in modularity, and effectively you get to kind of toggle these settings based off of a user's and a developer's preference, and ultimately they get to combine the stack and do the combinations, and that's a much better route than enforcing defaults or simply just limiting a few customizations.
Yeah, and I guess this is my beef with the crypto industry by large is you get the two sides of the coin, which is extraordinary tribalism and to some extent a lot of paternalistic instinct of this is how you use this tech and no other way.
That's a really good way to phrase it, actually.
And so I think we are trying to be responsible in how to set these things. We set a floor with security. We use, a mix of TEs and Tremere secret sharing to ensure that we have the ability to give the developer a lot of flexibility based on what they need and give the user a lot of guarantees with regards to how keys are managed and the fact that they are the only ones in control of set keys. But ultimately, how you should use this technology should really be up to the people who benefit from it, not to, the folks who read a paper once that really caught their fancy.
No, and I think that's exactly how it should be too, because that's how you actually make good products, not just going to showcase tech that is meant to do something that may not actually come to fruition. This has been a wonderful chat, Henri. I want to thank you for taking the time, and please, everybody, give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.